basically reason. However, I think that, think about this past century. Think about the evolution of man and our technological capabilities. And the way we reasoned 100 years ago isn't the way we reason today, isn't the way we'll be reasoning 100 years from now. And I think that if this program were to have been done 100 years from now, I think that this conversation would be a lot different. Simply because the more we find out, the more, basically technological, this sort of technological evolution has come about, the more answers we're going to find. And I think that there's a lot we haven't even tapped into yet. This universe is far, far too vast for us to come to any conclusions at this point.
Mm-hmm. But my question is touching on the actual meat and potatoes of science itself. And like you said, that this conversation will be different 100 years in either direction. But actually reasoning itself, the way that we reason depends on immaterial, unchanging laws of logic. Isn't that right?
Well, I think that you take you take the critical thinking skill of interpretation or explanation, you parse that down further to something called decoding significance and how we make sense of situations. And basically that's taking data and framing it and contextualizing it. And we ask ourselves the question, what data do we have right now to prove God's existence or not? And I think that a lot of it's conjecture. I don't know if you've ever been to the Vatican, but the Vatican's filled with great works of art. However, there's 18 turnstiles for you to actually get into the Vatican. And then after you've gone and seen these amazing works of art, there's a 2-floor gift shop selling Jesus keychains. And you start to ask the question, why does this really exist? Is it just a tourist attraction, or is it a symbol of something?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the thing. I think this idea of needing to reason, the more you start to connect the dots and really talk through it and see what's out there and what's really happening, it's sort of eye-opening in many ways.
Yeah. Well, certainly, and there's a lot of peripheral issues that you're touching on that would make a lot of interesting conversation. But I'll bet, Chad, if you're thinking what I'm thinking, we're still trying to look at the idea of reasoning and logic if it doesn't have a justification that's outside of the human family.
Right.
In other words, if you're just appealing to consensus that human beings generally do this or that, that doesn't justify anything concerning science or a reality external to ourselves. Isn't that right?
Yeah, and let me say this too, Justin, just to help our friend Jeff here. And by the way, I'm very much enjoying the conversation between you two. And Jeff, thank you so much for not swearing and keeping it clean. You're very, in fact, you sound very professional sounding. You must do this a lot, or you certainly are a professional person. But you're wrong, and I mean that in all sincerity and love. I had to throw that in there. No, listen. Yeah, I agree, of course, with Adam here, Jeff. You would have to agree as an evolutionist, and I'm trying to help you understand here. And I think that you have a logical brain. You don't sound like a person who doesn't understand this. Look, if there isn't something controlling our thinking, we're being controlled constantly. In fact, do you have any children, Jeff?
Yes, I do.
You do. So you don't even use this on your kids. Let me give you an example. The law of non-contradiction. The law of non-contradiction says opposite ideas can't be true at the same time in the same sense. Now, Jeff, if I went into a time machine in 8th century China and I was holding a stick or something they would understand, like maybe a small animal in my right hand, and I was showing them the small animal in my right hand, and I said to them, I'm holding this in my right hand and not in my right hand at the same time. Jeff, what would they say to that? Would they think I'm crazy, or would they think, it makes sense to me?
I think so. I mean, I'm not debating your notion or your statement there, but I do think that just from a practical sense of psychology, if you take a look at Maslow, and Maslow said that our need for a self-actualization, but also the ability for certainty, uncertainty, significance, growth, and contribution.
Yes.
This idea of certainty and uncertainty is something that we as human beings wrestle with. And
go back.
The certainty is the reasoning piece, but the uncertainty is the ability to make sense of it.
Oh.
And our need to continue to question.
Sure. Now go back. Just go back even further than that. Okay? Because here's what I'm going to say, and out of complete love for you, Jeff. If you go back far enough from the first living organism, what is the process of evolution? It's a chemistry reaction. You're reacting to previous natural causes over millions and millions of years. 4.8 billion years ago, we come from a rock, if you really want to look at it from the technical standpoint. Now, if that's true, then what Richard Dawkins says is true. If we come from a rock, then there are no purposes. Logic and reasoning is full of purpose, and it's not just full of purpose, but it is a governing thought process that requires objectivity. Evolution doesn't give us any objective anything. It's a subjective universe because evolution doesn't tell us how we ought to behave. So I think what Adam is getting at and what I'm getting at here is to telling you can't even justify some form of logic if we're dealing with evolution. Now, we can justify it if there's a God up there whose very thought process it is of our thinking is a reflection of his thinking. For instance, morality is objective. And you wouldn't argue if somebody hurt your children, Jeff, you would look at that as objectively wrong just as much if they did with my children. Okay? But if all we are is just protoplasm bumping around in the universe, there isn't really any reason, and you may have an opinion. You may think, well, consensus and the country agrees. Well, look, there's lots of people who disagree. So what do we do with that? Do we say, look, there's no rules that govern our minds, therefore we can get science out of that? I disagree. I think you can't even do a science experiment without there being an objectivity. I think with your worldview, Jeff, you would have a hard time, even though you don't do this with your normal life, I'm quite sure, when you do a science experiment, you assume objectivity. You don't assume random thinking in molecules. Am I right?
Well, so there's a couple of things I was thinking as you were talking. So this idea of our constant changing view on the world is something that, I see every single year. I work at a major, pediatric hospital where we study fetal development and the fetal brain. And if it wasn't for fMRI technology, our ability to understand how our mind grows in utero would never be possible. And as a result, we're finding things just in terms of our development, our reasoning, our consciousness, that is quite eye-opening. And I think that where science and religion sort of intersect is this is what I've seen, is that religion sort of doesn't want the information that science is providing it. And as we gain more information through science, we ask ourselves, is religion going to be open to what science has to say?
Chad, can I jump in on that one?
Another user is logged in using this account. I don't know. I'm disconnected. Hold on 1 second here. I might be having some issue.
I can hear you.
Sorry about that. Sorry, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put you guys on hold. I'm enjoying this conversation. Hold on to that thought, Jeff. If you can hold on the line, I am going to keep you on because I'm enjoying this, like I said. But I want to just fix something here on the computer and figure out why that's happening. So this is Chad Cassano, also known as Chan the Challenger. I got Adam with me today, and Jeff has just joined us. He is a scientist who just disagreed. That doesn't necessarily disagree. He's more agnostic, but I think he mostly disagrees with our premise that you can't even have science without God. And we're going to learn more about Jeff and what he believes in a minute. This is Chad, the Challenger, with 1,000,000% Radio on the CC Radio Network. We'll be right back. I think I fixed the issue here. That's all it took was a few seconds. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, I can.
All right, wonderful. Well, this is Chad, the Challenger with $1,000,000% Radio. By the way, if you're interested in connecting with me, I do have a Facebook a little page I'm working on right now. I know it's probably not much in there, but hey, the more of you that join my Facebook page, which is $1,000,000% Proof God Exists, if you just type that in to Facebook, you should see me in there. Like it, and I will send you some updates on the show. I haven't yet, I'll be honest with you, but I'm working on it. I'm trying. This whole radio gig is kind of a hard deal. I didn't realize it was going to be so hard. But hey, we're talking to two people today. I got my very good friend Adam, who's a teacher with me. We're both Christians, teach at a Christian school. That we talk about the objectivity of God, that the Bible is infallible. It is the Word of God. It is inerrant. And it is the truly supernatural Word of God that we hold to all truth about life and about who God is, who man is. And by the way, if you want to know more about Jesus and how you get saved, just stick around for a few more, because I'm going to be getting into the gospel with you and how you can be saved. If you're not sure, and by the way, if you're a Christian and you're not sure you're living the Christian life, and boy, I got a convicting message coming up on that. I'm going to have some guests on the show that really is going to whale that, so you don't want to miss that. I know it's going to be hard to listen to, but I care a lot about you. I care about your thinking, and I care about my guest today. His name is Jeff. He just called in the show. He is a scientist in the medical field, right, Jeff? And
yes, I am.
His attitude towards this is agnosticism, which means he's not quite sure if God does exist, but he certainly loves science. And by the way, I just want to kind of jump into something that, I know you want to say something, Adam, but just give me a second. Something that he said struck me. We Christians are not against science. We're not against the science experiments. What we're against is perpetrating lies and agendas for the evolutionary process. And when I say evolution, I mean the macro sense. The one that really can't be verified, that we come from some primate creature and that we're all related to bananas, as Kent Hovind has brilliantly put it. I hate to laugh at that, but that's kind of what it is. 4.8 billion years ago, there was a rock, cooled down. It was a hot molten mass before that, and then out of the goo, it rained on it for millions of years, and out of this little ooze or goo came the first living cell, and that's where we get all of life. So the coyote, the giraffe, and the human are all related to plants and animals. It's very, very interesting. We certainly don't believe that. We believe in the Genesis account, that in the beginning God created. So if you're that person, bravo. If you're not, I'll pray for you. But let's get more into the conversation. And I think that, Adam, you were going to jump in to say something here just before we went to our little break.
Yeah, it's interesting what Jeff was saying, that I've heard this before, and I thought through it, that we as human creatures with these, complex brains have a drive to find meaning and sort of to seek patterns in things, and that religion really is sort of this pattern-seeking, answer-giving system. And so you get anthropology studies the rise of philosophy and religion and all these different tribes and whatnot. So Christianity turns out to be just more of a successful attempt at religion than most of the other ones. And so if I were to interpret what Jeff is saying correctly, we're well-meaning sort of, super primates that have discovered a form of thinking that gives us purpose and meaning in what would otherwise be a very difficult existence that lacks that purpose and objective meaning. And look, Jeff, if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, I'd be right there with you. Because obviously your IQ has got to be probably about 50% higher than Chad's and mine combined. So nobody's going to argue that you're a stupid person. Well, a fundamentalist might. Somebody else might try to argue something ridiculous like you don't have the mind enough to understand